Hello, my name is Anne-Marie Cannon, and I'm the host of Armchair Historians. What's your favorite history? Each episode begins with this one question. Our guests come from all walks of life. YouTube celebrities, comedians, historians, even neighbors from the small mountain community that I live in. They're people who love history and get really excited about a particular time, place, or person from our distant or not so distant past. The jumping off point is the place where they became curious, then entered the rabbit hole into discovery. Fueled by an unrelenting need to know more, we look at history through the filter of other people's eyes. Armchair Historians is a Belgian Rabbit production. Stay up to date with us through Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Wherever you listen to your podcast, that is where you'll find us. Armchair Historians is an independent, commercial-free podcast. If you'd like to support the show and keep it ad-free, you can buy us a cup of coffee through Ko-fi, or you can become a patron through Patreon. Links to both in the episode notes. Hello, fellow Armchair Historians. In this very special episode of Armchair Historians, I'm joined by everybody's favorite co-host and my great-nephew, Finley. We talked to YouTube sensation Simon Bourne of Sci-Finds about one of our favorite hobbies, specifically mudlarking. Since the beginning, the River Thames, which flows from the Cotswolds through the heart of London and into the North Sea, has been a place where people from all over the world and throughout time have crossed, sailed, and walked along. It is a tidal river that rises and recedes with the tide of the North Sea. It's at low tide when mudlarks come out and peruse the Thames foreshore for treasure, pieces of history. Now, Simon is a Society of Thames member, which basically means he's an advanced mudlarker and able to search restricted areas of the foreshore. Simon Bourne, welcome to Armchair Historians.
Hello, how are you doing, Anne? All right?
Good. We're so excited. And Finley Gregg, welcome to Armchair Historians.
Thank you.
So we just get right off into it, Simon, and I'm going to ask you the question, what's your favorite history that we're going to be talking about today?
Well, the history that I'm used to finding is based in London, so English predominantly history, but I search the Thames foreshore. I'm a mudlark, which means we look for anything old and interesting on the foreshore of the River Thames when the tide goes out. So anything that's happened in and around London, and that includes multinational people coming in from all over the world through trade, commerce, visitors, you name it. They've used the Thames for transport. Things have dropped out of boats, dropped out of wallets, fallen down drains, been thrown in as rubbish, all by accident, and we are here to find it. So London is my area which I search the most.
So generally you search along the Thames River?
Yep, predominantly the River Thames, but I do go to other places as well. I do metal detecting in various fields in England, mostly in England. I've done a few bits abroad, but 98% of what I do is in England, a bit of Scotland. But any treasure hunting fascinates me, so I could be looking for bottles in old Victorian bottle dumps, to mudlarking in the outer reaches of the Thames and the Medway on hovercraft, also metal detecting in the Thames on the foreshore itself, and all number of rivers that might offer themselves as an interesting place to go hunting. Anywhere that I feel that there's a good chance of there being history lost in the past, me, myself, and my other friends, and anybody else who I can rope in will go along and just hope that we find a few good bits and bobs, because obviously Britain and England has got an exceedingly long amount of history, so there's stuff to be found everywhere. You just got to be willing to go out and actually look for it. Enthusiasm, because the British weather isn't always very kind, so we try and go in all weathers, but as long as you're wearing the right gear, nothing's really an obstacle.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Thames and why we find these things, and, like the fact that it's a tidal river and what that means, because a lot of my listeners have no idea what we're talking about.
Okay, so, to go back to the very beginning, mudlarking was a term given to a form of occupation, as it were, because the poorest of the poor usually children and old men, and old women as well, just try and scrape a living. They would go down on the tidal Thames back when the area was used for docking and unloading ships, and people working all over the Thames and all the docks, some of which are still there, but mostly not now. So in the past, there were what we knew then as mudlarks. They would go down onto the foreshore looking for pieces of coal and copper and rope, money for old rope, sayings like that. All came from the poorest of the poor, looking for anything they could sell to make a living. Now, fast forward 150 odd years, we do it now as a pastime, a hobby that we share with each other on social media. I've got a YouTube channel, there's Facebook pages and Instagram pages, and other people are sharing it. It's probably been going strongly since, I'd say, the late 60s, and then it got more popular in the 70s and 80s, and then going through to the 90s even more so. And now, up in current times, we're talking that there's 2,000 permit holders. So every person that goes down the Thames foreshore would need a permit. So the permit is issued by the PLA, so that it's legal for us to pick up objects and obviously take them home and save them from the from the river, reclaiming them. Now, what's happened is over the years there's been all sorts of industry and things have been dumped in the Thames. So over 2,000 years there's been all sorts of nasties thrown into the Thames, and good stuff as well. And that's built up layer upon layer upon layer. It wasn't until like the 60s and 70s that containerisation happened. So the Thames wasn't used as much as it used to be, in terms of the amount of boats going up there with cargo, unloading with Customs House, Queen Hythe Dock, all these famous places that have been used for centuries or millennia for unloading and delivering all the goods from all around the world to London, ceased to exist as soon as they got containerisation, i.e. the big, huge tankers that you see going across the world with containers on. So all that happens now further out to sea, or the docks that are around Essex and Kent. So that leads us on to what's happened in the meantime, and people have gone down there and noticed the erosion happening. Now there's a few clippers that still use the Thames that transport commuters and tourists into London, and those clippers go quite fast, and what they're doing, they're actually eroding out a lot of the mud that has been stagnant for hundreds of years, and also throwing things up onto the Thames foreshore itself. Now, as we mentioned, it's tidal, so we get a small window wherever we go out, there's always a small 4-hour approximate window, 2 hours either side of low tide. So we have to be very careful when we're going out to check the tides to make sure we don't go at an odd time, or obviously you can't go out at high tide, you have to obviously go out at low tide. When people are down there, they've noticed that new things are being thrown up by these clippers, and also lots of things are being eroded out and lost as well. There's certain archaeological features such as posts for wharves that have been eroded out completely and actually lost, but there's people that actually record it as well, such as the Thames Discovery Group, and they also offer guided foreshore walks, so people can actually go out with them and learn more about the foreshore through their eyes.
Yeah. The way that we found you is that back in 2019, my partner and I were coming to England again, and I was obsessed with your show in mudlarking. And so I got a mudlarker's license. And of course, we had to cancel our trip because of the pandemic. And then my great-nephew Finley, and his mother, Megan, who's on, but we don't see her, they started metal detecting in Colorado. And they're like, Ann, you should come and go metal detecting with us. And so I tried it, and it kind of filled the void that mudlarking would have left for me. And so we really got into metal detecting during the pandemic. That's how we connected. And then Finley started watching basically you and Nicola. And he is obsessed. He wants to go to the Thames and go mudlarking. Now, I do have a question about that. Can kids get a mudlarking license?
I think under 16s is free,
Oh,
as far as I remember.
bonus.
Yeah.
Bonus. Well, so that's just kind of our background and how we come to this. And I do want to I'm working on another interview with another Mudlarker right now. So I think I'm going to try to do a Mudlark a month and call it that segment, because there is just so many angles to this. Like, you can just take one object and make a whole episode out of it. So this is really good because it's giving my audience kind of a general understanding of it. P.S. I did just get back from the UK, and I did go down to the foreshore 5 times while I was there and found some stuff. And I keep waking up and telling my partner, let's go to the foreshore today. But that doesn't happen because we're in America. Anyways, I did want to know, like, was it mudlarking or was it metal detecting that you started? Kind of what was your evolution with the treasure hunting, if you will?
Yeah. It was metal detecting. I just had the craving, like yourself. You just wanted to try, give the hobby a go. You've heard about things being found. And I've always had an interest in history, whether it be, I just enjoyed looking at old stuff. You know, I was very close to my grandparents, and they would open boxes of trinkets and stuff and just be fascinated by anything old, and enjoy going around boot fairs, which is what you call flea markets in America. I loved museums, and I did have a hunger for it. It wasn't necessarily the kings and queens and necessarily the politics and the wars and stuff, but I just liked the everyday items, the stories that they could tell. I just found it fascinating that other people have owned these things and either lost them or they've had a life of their own. And I find that really interesting. They can unlock secrets, and you can just use your imagination to think what other things have been used for and the stories that they can tell. And yeah, I was just telling my friend the other day, actually, when I was about Finley's age, I just remember being in the playground and collecting these kind of granite stones, thinking that they were treasure. Obviously, they were just rubbish, but you started collecting these, mysterious little stones and putting them in a cabinet, in a jam jar. That's my earliest memory of doing any real treasure hunting. And then, believe it or not, I saw the Walt Disney, or is it? I think it's Walt Disney one. Film Sword in the Stone. Have you ever seen Sword in the Stone? It's quite popular.
I've not seen it. We're gonna have to watch it.
Never seen Sword in the
Finley.
Stone. Oh, you got to see Sword in the Stone.
Okay.
King Arthur, yeah. So it's obviously filmed. It's based on the British legend of King Arthur.
Sure.
And there was a scene where they were jumping in and out of a big moat, and underneath in the moat there was all these swords and helmets from all the soldiers, and that just piqued my interest more than anything else. I was thinking, all that stuff's in the river and they haven't saved it, but obviously it was a cartoon. But at the time, I thought. Yeah, I was like, I had that attraction to looking for things underwater. Whether that had any effect on what I did in later life, I don't know. But when I was at school, I didn't really like history. I wasn't too bothered by all the dates and stuff. We learned about 1066, 1660, or then World War II, all the obvious stuff we learned about, which is fine. But then when you had to choose between geography and history, I choose geography because it meant you got out more and actually physically looked for the rivers and the geology and the topography of the land. And you can see how the land changed and was used. But history was always stuck indoors, and I thought, that's not that interesting. But if they maybe had some more field trips back at school and got people out and about and handling objects, then maybe that would be something I would have been more interested in. But anyway, going back to your original question, about 10 years ago, I picked up my first metal detector. It was a cheap one, just to see if I could go out and find a few bits and bobs of my own. And I didn't want to spend a lot because metal detectors are expensive, so you don't really want to, splash out all that money and realise it's not really for you. So I just bought a cheapo one, and it did the job. It picked up metal in the ground, and my first find was a 1950s half crown, which looks silver, but it's not. It's like mostly nickel, but it was fantastic for me. It was a beautiful design nonetheless, and that just got me hooked. Thinking, well, that was done with a cheap metal detector in the woods out the back of my house. There must be more to be found. And so I started Googling the interesting places near me on the internet and found a club called Thames and Field, and they did both metal detecting and searching the Thames. And it was about this time that I also took a bike ride down to the lower reaches of the Thames on my bike, and I went for a walk on the foreshore, noticed there was pieces of pottery, like you mentioned earlier, that were quite interesting. I was thinking, maybe there's more to be found here, and I need to go further up into the central part of London. Combined with the fact that I'd found this club that I thought might just be full of old nerds, and being 30 at the time, I was thinking, do I really want to be, is this the sort of hobby that I want to be, be involved in? But I did. I went along to one of the meetings on my own, and I never looked back. And met some amazing people with lots of knowledge that passed that on to me. And the infectious excitement you get when you find stuff is felt by more than just yourself. You realised, and people get excited about all sorts of stuff. So yeah, met some very interesting people. Lots of people that could put me in the right direction, and was out as much as I physically could. But it went from more metal detecting to mudlarking purely because it was, for me, it was slightly more accessible and slightly more interesting. But again, I was metal detecting fields. I met detectorists through the club and through various things, friends of friends and stuff. And then got my own permission to go out metal detecting where I took other friends. So it just grew and grew, like the interest and the obsession, if you like, of just wanting to keep on finding stuff. And I think it's a good addiction to have because you're out in the fresh air. You've got gadgets for the guys, metal detectors and things that go bleep, and then you're digging up treasure. It's quite physical, and it's the unknowing of every time you turn over a piece of spoil or turn over a coin or look at a part of a pipe stem that's sticking out the ground at the foreshore. Is it going to be a decorated one? Is the coin going to be an old one? And what is that signal you get when you go metal detecting? A lot of it is trash, and it takes a lot of time to get your eye in and to find something good. It took me months to find anything good, what we call good. But even picking up the simplest pieces of pottery, like you mentioned, or modern coins, only 50 years old, it's all history, and it's all stuff that people have left behind. So that's pretty much the journey that I've taken.
And it really fuels the imagination too, because there's that thought of somebody dropped this pipe 300 years ago for me to find it. And it's that tangibility, and it's almost like going into a different dimension. Anyways, we're kindred spirits. I get that. And I think Finley is becoming a kindred spirit as well. I know that he has some questions he wants to ask you. So, Finley, why don't you ask Simon your first question?
What is your favorite find?
Cool, that is difficult. Well, I've got to say there's so many good finds. They all have a different reaction in terms of how you feel when you found them. One of them, I'll tell you one of my. There's quite a few, but let's just pick. I'll pick my my dog tag that I found quite early on in my mudlarking career, if you can call it that, but we do for a laugh career. So what it was, I was with a friend, with Jules. He's often in a few of my videos. You may remember Jules and his dog Poppy. And it was before I was doing YouTube, but he said to me, we were searching a certain spot in Limehouse, which is East London, and he was scraping a certain area, and I was searching another area, and he said, "Oh, come over here, try next to me," which not very many people do, because people like to have a spot, they like to stick to it, they don't really like sharing. But he was a nice guy, so he said, "Come over here and scrape next to me." So I was, and there's a big paving slab that obviously been thrown out, with the war or whatever, or just thrown in as rubble. And I lifted it up and started scraping underneath there. And when we say we're scraping, we've got a trowel, and we just coaxing back gently a few layers of sand. Because if you think about it, if you dropped a coin or a ring on the beach, it doesn't just sit on the surface, it drops down. So usually the lowest point it can, or it'll just stay there at a certain spot. So you take a trowel, like a builder's trowel that you'd use for cement, and you'd lightly scratch away the loose on the surface. You don't go down any further than the hard pack, because there's no point. So we're scraping away, and this coin thing flipped up, which was silver. It was a bit grubby, but there was some writing on it. So by the time you can use your thumb and a bit of water to get the sort of light dirt off, and we could see immediately there was some writing on it. It had a badge which turned out to be the Royal Flying Corps badge, and that is the predecessor to the RAF, which is the Royal Air Force. And there was a name on it, N. Posner, a number, and then the word Jew underneath that. All this information on the little coin. On the other side, it had it was the French Marianne. So from a 2 French franc silver coin, that was left as it was. the side of the writing on had been sanded down and engraved. Now, how exciting was that? I thought at first it was a 10p, but then when you realise that there's, obscure writing on it, beautifully engraved as well it was, fantastically engraved, obviously done by a professional. So that was the amazing find. And then what I did after that is research the guy, Nathan Posner. He was born in about 1901, I think. No, a bit earlier than that, because in 1911 he was 18, because he went off. We know he went off to World War One, and it was his dog tag. I realised he was in the army, well, actually the Royal Air Force, but Royal Flying Corps back then. And he was a tailor, and he lived in Commercial Road, which wasn't too far from where we'd found the token,
Wow.
The dog tag. Sorry. So his dad was a tailor, and he was a tailor, and they lived at a tailor's, and I wrote to the local advertiser of Tower Hamlets, which is the area that the local free advertisers go, and I said, look, got a good story for you. I found this dog tag. I've got the name. I know who the guy is. I just need to know if there's any descendants living in the area that would want it back, because I've done the research. I've found the find. If there's any family left, then I'd love to return it.
Wow.
So they wrote an article. If you Google my name, Simon Bourne, and you put in dog tag, it comes up with the article. They put it online as well. So after 2 weeks, they come back to me. The editor said, "Oh, good news! We've got the grandson of Nathan Posner. His name's John Silverton, I think it was."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And if you'd like to return it, you can do. So I said, absolutely. He belongs to his family. So we met up, and I gave it back to him, and he was doing his family research at the time. And he was overwhelmed with what it was. In fact, Nathan's daughter was still alive at the time, and she was in her 90s, and she said, I couldn't meet her because she was in poor health, but she said it made her year knowing that her dad's dog tag had been returned and found.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a beautiful thing. And it was the good thing about meeting John Silverman, his name was. He's got the pictures of Nathan, so we've got photographs of him, and he told me that perhaps because he was a tailor, we think that he got sent over to France during World War One in about 1914 to 1918, and he was posted with the Royal Flying Corps in a certain part of the force where they would make the canvas outer skins of the very first planes. And what better person to make them than a tailor, a master tailor? Yeah, so he was out there doing that. And there's a picture of him with, there's a picture of him with the 2nd Airman written underneath. So he may have actually got a chance to fly them. I think he was probably a bit of a dreamer, thought he could go over there, help out where he could, bloody good sewer, a tailor, got some great skills. I can apply these to the aircraft. And if I get a chance to go up in a plane, in 1914, what a great opportunity. So and when he was out there, he even commissioned someone to make him a dog tag. It's got 2 holes, so it's probably worn around the wrist, as we know back then, as opposed to around the neck as they do now. But the needlework is fantastic. So being a guy who can hold a needle, I'm not sure whether he was the guy that engraved it or he got one of his friends to do it. But we know that people used to make sweetheart brooches as well from people's cap badges, and they would send them home. They get spare uniforms, and they'd make sweetheart brooches. So there was definitely a market there, and trench art. There was definitely some extremely talented guys. And this is before the days of computers, and everything was done by hand. People had a lot more hand to eye skill. Look at the handwriting. When you look at a 100-year-old letter, look at the handwriting, how much they practice compared to us now. We just type it all up. So yeah, that's my favourite find, Finley. Sorry to rant on about that, but that's the full story. You've got everything.
Good question. Well done, Finn.
And my last question is, what is still on your bucket list?
Oh, what is on my bucket list? Oh, that's another good question. There's so many things that I'd like to find, but I think I saw one of my friends find this thing, and I've wanted to find one ever since, and they hardly ever come up. But he found, are you familiar with Pirates of the Caribbean? We can talk about Johnny Depp now, it's all right, yeah? Jack Sparrow, do you remember he's got that pistol that he fires a lot, and he's got one bullet left in his pistol of his barrel? That's called a flintlock pistol. And they were quite common, and there's there's one pub which has got them all on the wall. And one of my friends actually found one in the Thames, and it was a bit worse for wear, but it was definitely a flintlock pistol. And just because some of the places that I go to, for example, I go to Wapping in London, and that's where a lot of the pirates were hung for treason. There's still a hangman's noose outside the Prospect of Whitby pub. So if you ever get a chance to go to the Prospect of Whitby pub, have a look outside. It's not the original, obviously. It's a reproduction one, but it's a nod to when they used to take down treacherous pirates down to the foreshore. And again, no TV. It was a family event. Come along, bring your family, and we'll give you a nice public hanging. And they would leave them in the Thames for 3 days or for 6 tides or whatever it was, so that they knew that they were definitely dead. Yeah, to find a pistol that had been used by anyone. I have found weapons, but to find an old, 18th or 19th even century pistol would be absolutely amazing. That would be on the top of my list.
Yeah, and especially if it were engraved and you could connect the dots like you did with Posner.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, that would be incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's always a chance.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions you wanted to ask Simon?
Nope.
Okay. So maybe one more thing, if we could talk about it, if you have time, is...
Okay.
So you talked about how you have to have a license, a mudlarking license. Now you have a specially designated license, which gives you more permissions, I guess. And you've been involved in some really impressive digs. Like, I think one was near the Tower of London, Trader's Gate. How did that all come about? Like, how did you get that special designation?
Yeah, so what it is, there's a society called the Society of Thames Mudlarks and Antiquarians. So they go back to like the 70s, that particular group of people. There was the history of it is when mudlarking first became popular in the 70s, there was a lot of people going down there, digging big holes. Things weren't being recorded. And so there needed to be kind of a bit of an authority to make sure that there was regulations in place to make sure things were at least getting seen by the museum and that there was some kind of order to the process. So those guys, the society started up so that they were kind of like a middleman between the PLA, which is the Port of London Authority, and the just general mudlarkers, so that they could have, there was a voice on both sides. So if people would, the PLA were concerned about certain things, they could voice them, and the same with the mudlarkers. There was a time when they were actually going to close down all metal detecting and mudlarking, period, in England and Britain.
Wow.
They didn't like the fact that a common man, this is the museums I'm talking about, they didn't like the fact that a common person, or man or woman, could pick up a detector or a spade, go and find what we see as treasure, and then do what they wanted with it. They didn't like the fact they had no control, so they tried to ban it, and they were almost successful. But if it wasn't for people in the Society of Thames Mudlarks for protesting and standing up for the hobby, because that's what it is essentially, it's just a hobby that we absolutely love, and we're saving history, not stealing it, which is what they thought we were doing. Obviously, there is some unscrupulous people in this hobby that, when you think about things that can be found, there will be wrong-uns, as we say over here, that are great attractors. But what there needs to be done, rather than banning it, is have some sort of control. So over a lot of negotiations, there were certain things that were established, and the society was one of them, basically so that things could be run through them, and they could have the responsibility of all the mudlarks put on them. So if people were playing up, then they would have control of it. So with that authority came and the responsibility came certain benefits. So the benefits included searching in areas where other standard permit holders aren't allowed, and you can apply to become a member of the society, but you have to be known as a responsible detectorist and mudlarker. You have to have a good reputation, and you have to have a history of recording things with the Museum of London. So you have to have so many artifacts, like 60 or whatever artifacts successfully recorded. And that doesn't mean just picking up a bit of pottery saying that'll do. All good stuff that the museum actually want. To have a track record of showing you got responsibility in you. So after a long wait, we're talking like 3 years of putting your name down and then waiting for someone to either pop their clogs, because there are a lot of old guys in there, or just leaving out of whatever reason. Eventually, you can become a member. There are some very good benefits. We can dig deeper than other standard permit holders. Do you know what? Not that I think I've done it once or twice in the 4 or 5 years, or maybe I haven't been that long. Maybe I've been a member for about 3 years, but I've never had the real, urge to want to dig down to. People ask me, "Oh, why don't you dig and dig and dig?" I've tried it once, and it was a lot of hard work. But I like the idea of detecting certain areas which are only left for the society to do. So there's that bonus. And yeah, when you mentioned about the tower, there was a day where we could search in front of the Tower of London on the foreshore there, which is really fascinating. When the foreshore outside the Tower of London, it used to be a public beach, and you could just walk down there back in the 20s and 30s and 40s perhaps. And I think it was George V that said he managed to get a load of sand put on the Tower of Foreshore because it was too expensive for a lot of Londoners to go out to the seaside, which was quite a long way away, and a train ticket, no cars back then. So he decided we'd make the Tower of London foreshore a public place for everyone to go forever. Okay, forever. But now you can't go down there. So what's that all about?
Yeah, what's that all about?
Yeah, you should be allowed to go down there.
When you did that special dig at the tower, did you have to turn everything in, or were there certain things that you had to turn in and other things you got to keep?
Well, those days were specially organised by another authority called COLAS. It was an organised day, so there were people from the museum present with tables for identification purposes as well. So they were keen, and it was very popular. There were hundreds of people down there, not just us. We were lucky. We did have an excluded little area. The Mudlarks had their own area where they knew that there was going to be some very interesting things potentially turning up, and they just wanted to make sure that it was definitely going to get shown to the people at the museum. And yes, they did get to see everything that was found and record it, and it was dutifully returned if they didn't want to use it in their own collections. If the museum turned around and said, "Oh, we'd love to have that on display or keep that in our collection," then we'd be more than happy to let them take it. More often than not, then the things we find on the foreshore are very rarely valuable. They're valuable in the sense of history, and they're valuable in the sense of the knowledge you can gain from them, and things that turn up that you don't expect them to. So they've got a lot of value in terms of the value of knowledge and academical value. Sorry, but in terms of value, yeah, they're not. Very rarely you'll find something worth a great deal of money. Not enough to make it a job or anything. So. We do it purely for the pleasure, and if the museum wants to record things we found, or we offer them everything we find anyway, and we say to them, "Look, these are the things I found this month. Do you want to take any of it, or is it stuff you've seen a million times and you don't need it anymore, or it's not what I thought it was?" Sometimes you get confused about what these things are, because sometimes the objects look a lot more tantalising than you're led to believe. So there's lots of mistakes that happen. So the museum can put us right then and say, "No, it's not that, it's this," and modern junk, or it's.
Well, it sounds like a good symbiotic relationship, because now they can work with the Mudlarkers, and they're kind of doing their bidding in a way, as long as they're being honest about it, like you are. And when we were in the UK, we got back last week, we went up to Scotland and to Edinburgh, and all of the museums that I went to that had hoards on display, they were found by metal detectorists.
Yeah.
And also it sounds like the knowledge that you get from the museum professionals, historians, is also beneficial to the people who are finding treasure.
Exactly. Well, not only are we finding stuff for our own thrills and, enjoyment, we're providing knowledge to the world and to the future generations that would otherwise be lost. Lots of archaeologists are anti-detectorists because they feel that there's places that they would rather keep in situ for when they're ready to excavate them. but a lot of these sites aren't known about to archaeologists, so they've learnt stuff. It's like it's a double-edged sword for the archaeologists. You know, they'll lose some objects to detectorists or amateur historians, but they know that if they don't allow it, I mean, there are other countries that ban it completely, like Germany. I've learned recently that Germany don't allow metal detecting, and you think,
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they got just as much history as we have, maybe even more. No, not just talking about the war, but they've got Roman occupation and Saxon and everything. So, but their government, for some reason, can't get their head around the fact that they'd rather it rot in the ground than let a common guy that can afford a metal detector, or even say guy, woman, man, child, person, to go out and find it. They would rather it just never be found, which is a real crying shame. So they should take a leaf out of our book, work together and find the stuff, and then everybody can hopefully benefit from it.
Right. Finley, I'm going to ask you a question just because we have Simon here, and I know that you've been really getting into metal detecting, and you and your mom are planning a trip to England to do hopefully some mudlarking and metal detecting, right?
Yep.
So what is your favorite find?
Real quick, I have something else to just add.
Okay.
This is if when we go to England, my bucket list.
What's on your bucket list?
These are my favorite finds.
Okay.
Brooch.
A brooch.
I found one in the mountains.
Oh,
awesome.
You found a brooch in the mountains metal detecting?
Just looking at the ground.
Good stuff. Eyes only, that's what we call it.
And this is my bucket list for England. Silver coin and gold coin.
Well, I've never found a gold coin in 10 years of metal detecting, but you got to set your sights very high.
and a pipe.
And a pipe. Well, you can you should find a pipe, or at least part of a pipe. The pipe bowl, or maybe definitely find stems on the foreshore. So that's a good one. You can look forward to finding that.
I found a lot of stems, and I was mudlarking in down by Greenwich, the north side, and I got all muddy, all dirty. Didn't find, my thing was I wanted to find a clay pipe. Didn't find one, and then I had to meet my friends for lunch, and we went for a walk in a park in Greenwich, and I got a cramp in my leg, and I'm like, I got to go sit down. I have a really bad cramp in my leg. And so I walked over to a bench. I looked down on the ground, and I found an intact bowl with a little bit of the stem on it in the dirt in the park. It was crazy.
That is very unusual, but crazy things have happened. Maybe a mudlarker dropped it on their bag when they were going back to their car.
I don't know. It could have been that. It could have been anything. So that was crazy. But so is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you want to share with my audience, Simon?
Well, not really. I mean, if you haven't seen my YouTube channel, then if you don't mind giving that a plug, then head on over to there. The finds are very varied, and what I do with my finds as well is a lot of channels, they find the stuff, they find some nice gear, they get all excited about it, and then that's the end of it. And you think, well, what was that exactly? What's it got to do with anything else? So I try and make sure that the audience knows at least the basics of what I've found and the history, and even the most mundane thing can give a really good story. Mm-hmm. And if there's not much in the terms of stories and history, usually there's something which I can then upcycle or make into some artwork or do something creative with. So there's always something going on with the finds after I found them. Maybe just even present them in a good way. So I film all that as well and show you towards the end of the video something that I've done with it. And so it's either nice bite-sized pieces of history so that you get the full picture about each and every find. Well, not each and every find, some of the finds. Sometimes I find too much and I just don't have enough time to go through every single one. Right. If people want to leave a comment, then I'll happily answer them if I've missed out something. But it's a great community as well. Lots of people involved and asking good questions, and and joining in with the hunt with me.
So that was going to be my next question. Where can we find you?
Cool. So yeah, I'm on YouTube, and it's Cy Finds Thames Mudlark. So SI. I'm Simon, so it's Cy Finds. Generally, it's me doing the finding. Sometimes it's my friends. I'm not competitive. As long as someone I'm with has finding something good, then it makes it a good day. I mean, a mate of mine. This is an exclusive. He found a beautiful Neolithic, what we think is an arrowhead, a flint napped arrowhead. And you find them a lot of there. You got Native American arrowheads that you guys find quite a lot of. Well, they're still tricky to find. You got to know where to look, but they are. It's similar to that. And Finley's smiling like he might have found one in the past. But yeah, they are the glorious things to find, and they're little works of art. Anyway, I found a few flakes and a few blades, and he was really teaching me what I was looking for. So I like to give lots of variety to my channel. So I don't just do always mudlarking at the Thames. I'll try and do other rivers, throw a bit of metal detecting out there. In fact, next weekend on the 17th to the 19th of June, me and Steve, who I own the hovercraft with, again, if you haven't seen the videos, just look at the hovercraft, because
I love that. I love the stuff you find, like whole intact things out there wherever you guys are going. It's amazing.
Yeah, we found Roman pots and skulls and weapons and unexploded bombs. It's never ending. But me and Steve, we're putting on a metal detecting rally, which means people buy tickets, turn up, and do some metal detecting. I'll be there, obviously, with Steve. We'll be detecting, and we can stop and chat. And so there'll be a video about that, Finley. I know you won't be able to get over to England in time for that, but
bummer.
And plus, the airfare might be a bit too much for your pocket money. But maybe when you're older, we'll get together and do something. But yeah, the tickets on sale for that. So if there is any people from Britain listening, or people that want to fly over, unlikely, but you never know. Yeah, that's going to be a good little event. So that's going to happen on the 17th to 19th of June, and it's just it's another variety of metal detecting and treasure hunting that I like to mix it up and try and keep things different as much as I can. Although I'll always go back to the Thames, because that's where my most fond memories and finds have come from. But treasure is everywhere. Treasure is where you look for it. It can be a flea market, or it can be an antiques shop, or it can be at the end of your path, or in your garden. It hasn't got to be far. As long as you've got the spirit of adventure and the spirit of hunting things and just going out there and hoping what you might find, that's what that it can be for all abilities, all ages, and as long as you've got a will to go out there and look for it and get off your bum and go out there, there'll be stuff to find. Even going down like skips, or what you guys call trash dumpers and stuff like that. Like there's stuff. I found a beautiful clock in one the other day. It was a modern one, but it was a fully working clock that someone had thrown out. So I thought,
oh my goodness. I know Finley had a big smile on his face because you're talking his language. He's always looking, always. And he'll be on the playground at school, like you said, and he finds stuff. And absolutely. I always know when he's FaceTiming me that he's found something. He's like, oh, Ann, look at this. I found this. He likes to do his roundups.
As you're saying, you can go anywhere and find stuff. One of my friends once, we were on the playground, and my friend found a diamond ring.
Get out of here! Whoa, that's crazy.
I wonder if it belonged to a teacher and they were looking for it. Oh, it did. There we go. Just goes to show you, doesn't it? It helps when you're smaller because you can see the ground easier.
Yep, that's how I found 3 arrowheads.
Yeah. He's been going to places in Colorado because, like you said, there's a lot of indigenous history here, and he's been finding arrowheads, and he's way advanced than I am. But
I've found 3 arrowheads, and brilliant. One was really intact, but it had a chip off the end, and one of the ears were broken off.
Wow, well done. Good job.
Anything else that we need to ask Simon, or Simon has to ask us?
Well, I mean, are you actively looking yourself at the moment, Anne? Are you out and about? Are you what areas do you search for at the moment? Do you
Well,
go
I
out
do.
looking
I
in?
live in Colorado, and I live in
Right.
a National Historic Landmark district. So a lot of mining history here. The town started in 1859, and I also do history tours. So I'm a real history geek.
Oh,
That's
okay.
my business, and the biggest thing I found here is an 1893 dime. That was my big
Nice.
historical find,
Nice.
but I go for walks and I collect all kinds of pieces of old bottles and things like that. And my boyfriend's like, "What are you going to do with all this stuff?" But I don't know. I just know that there's a story attached to it. And I try to be a little bit more discerning about what I pick up. So, but like I said, I did come to England. I lived there in 2012. Didn't even know about mudlarking, wish I did. So when we went there the last time, my mudlarking license was good, still good. 3 years,
Hmm.
that's a good deal.
Yeah.
So I was able to use that, and you know, everything I found was amazing. A lot of pipe stems. The one thing that I found that I thought was pretty amazing was, and I saw it and I thought I've seen that in sci-fi videos. I don't know what
No
it is,
way.
but I'm going to pick it up. And it was a piece of chainmail. So I was like,
Wow.
yeah, it was just one little tiny piece of chainmail. So it was
That's
crazy.
yeah. That's awesome. I love finding that stuff.
Yeah.
You find a lot outside the tower, oddly enough, and that's where it really sits. But there's not a lot. There's some parts, some other places, but the towers, there's a real hot spot for it. Obviously, because they made it there, so they were probably like throwing stuff out, or it's getting lost and dropped and stuff, or getting just tested and all broke up and is laying in out there at the moment. So yeah, good job on that.
Thank you, Simon, for being here today. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I hope I've inspired some people to get out there and go metal detecting or treasure hunting in any capacity that you can. So thank you very much for inviting me on. It's been a
Oh,
pleasure.
yeah. Thank you, Finley. Thanks for being here and being my co host today. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
There you have it, Simon Bourne of Sci-Finds. Be sure to check out his YouTube station. I will put a link in the episode notes. And thank you again, Finley, for joining Ann as her co-host. Have a great week, everyone.